It turns out the Prime Minister was telling the truth when he said he was different from Justin Trudeau. He's actually worse. This week, the Prime Minister introduced his first spending bill, called the Main Estimates for the coming year. It's a $500 billion spending bill with no budget. He promised to cap spending increases to 2%, but then 1 hour later stuck Canadians with an 8% spending hike, nearly 3 times larger than inflation and population growth combined. Single moms, seniors, and small business owners have to budget before they spend. Why doesn't the Prime Minister? This all from the guy who said he was the man with the plan and would be a strong fiscal manager. The Prime Minister will claim these are investments that will make Canadians better off, but the only ones getting richer are government consultants, who will get a record-breaking $26.1 billion this year. That's even 36% more than what Trudeau gave them. Mr. Speaker, that's $1,400 from every Canadian household going to federal government consultants. Brookfield shareholders wouldn't have stood for this, so why should Canadians?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
And now, oral questions, questions orales. The member for Thornhill.
The Prime Minister spent weeks parading around the country and promising Canadians he'd, quote, spend less. But the guy who was supposed to give us fiscal restraint dropped an 8% spending hike, after promising he'd cap government spending at 2%. A big broken promise and a $500 billion spending bill without an actual budget. He called himself an Ottawa outsider, but he's picking up pretty quick on the ways of old Liberal Ottawa. Businesses and households across the country spend their money and live within their means. Why can't the Prime Minister do the same?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. In fact, we have more good news, Mr. Speaker, for Canadians. In fact, Statistics Canada just announced this morning that the Canadian economy grew by 2.2% in the first quarter, Mr. Speaker. This is a plan that is working. This is a plan about building the strongest economy in the G7. This is about transforming our economy, Mr. Speaker. This is about an ambitious, a confident, and a prosperous Canada, Mr. Speaker. We will deliver for Canadians.
The member for Thornhill.
Leave it to the Liberals to tell Canadians that $500 billion blank check and an 8% spending hike after promising to cap it at 2% means good news for Canadians. A request for a $500 billion blank check isn't a plan. It's the exact opposite. And so far, the plan is the government wants to send $1,400 per Canadian family for consultants, for government consultants. He said they cut it by $7 billion. Instead, they increased it by $6 billion. If the Prime Minister is the man with a plan who you want to hire in a crisis, then why does he need to hire so many families?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is an interesting question, but the real question this morning is how much the Canadian economy has grown over the last quarter. And the answer, 2.2%. Much higher than economists' predictions. So when you have a plan to grow the Canadian economy, to make it the strongest in the G7, to transform our economy, to have an ambitious and prosperous country, Mr. Speaker, well, that's what Canadians have asked for, and that's what we're delivering.
Mr. Speaker, if the government had a plan, they'd table a budget yesterday and tell Canadians exactly how their money is being spent. And of course, nothing says affordability like hiring the architect of the housing crisis to fix the problem here. The new housing minister let Vancouver home prices rise by 179% when he was in office. So I have a very simple question. Can he tell us how much of this government's inflationary spending, how much is each Canadian mortgage going to go up as a result?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I like this question period this Friday because we have so many good news for Canadians. It is interesting, the question, but the real question is that we have a plan and our plan is working. 2.2%, Mr., in terms of growth in the last quarter. This is what Canada is about. It's about investing in our people. It's about investing in our industry. It's about investing in Canada. Mr. Speaker, not only we have growth, but we always have a triple rating, a AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. One of the two countries in the G7. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, that's a confident Canada. That's an ambitious Canada. That's the Canada we'll build together.
Lennox and Addington and Tyan Dinaga.
The Prime Minister's first bill has shattered his spending promises. He was elected on a promise of financial transparency. accountability, and responsibility. And only 1 month later, he has already torn down that facade, treating taxpayer dollars like some seedy, secretive corporate bank account instead of the purse strings of this nation. Mr. Speaker, in what world can this Prime Minister justify spending $500 billion in taxpayer dollars without a budget?
The President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, this new government is making sure that spending is being carefully managed and focused on our most pressing priorities. We will continue to review our spendings to make sure we are being efficient, effective, and focused on meeting the challenges and opportunities Canada faces.
The member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington, and Tyon-Denaga.
This government's dismissive rhetoric does not stand up to scrutiny. They promised to cap spending at 2%, but hours later increased it by 8%. No fiscal anchor, no fiscal guardrails. We are in a fiscal freefall, and working-class Canadians are paying the bill, including nearly $1,400 per household spent on this Prime Minister's corporate consultant cronies. Mr. Speaker, it's insulting to Canadians. How is this Liberal government asking to spend $500 billion without a budget?
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about the investments in the main. It includes important funding to support the Canadian Forces, health services for First Nations, dental care, border services and immigration, veterans benefit and housing. The new government is investing in Canadians to build Canada strong.
The member for Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes.
Speaker, under these Liberals, it's the same spending, same ministers, and same painful consequences for Canadians. Except now, we don't know the government's full plan because they refuse to table a budget, something quite new to Canada. Budgets have been presented during wars, economic downturns, and yes, even following elections. We do know that this government has increased spending on consultants by 36%, meaning every Canadian household must pay $1,400 to get gimmicks instead of results. How is this Liberal government asking to spend $500 billion without even a budget?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's the same old Conservative, but with new slogan, Mr. Speaker. We're just a week in this House, and they're coming back with slogan. On this side of the House, Canadians watching at home know they can trust us, Mr. Speaker, because we promise and we deliver. We promise to be there for Canadians, and the first thing we delivered, Mr. Speaker, was a tax cut for 22 million Canadians. There are people in this riding watching today, and they're going to thank this new Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, to make their life more affordable. But we have even more good news, Mr. Speaker. We're removing the GST on new homes for first-time home buyers up to $1 million, Mr. Speaker. This is
The member for Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes.
Well, Speaker, I don't think asking for a budget on behalf of Canadians is a slogan, and actually something Canada has always had, is a budget. In fact, this government has spent $330,000 just on consultants to rebrand a Crown corporation. The goal of that name change is to get people real excited about high-speed rail from Toronto to Quebec City. People in my area have grown quite tired of waiting decades for this project to become reality. So when will the government actually get shovels in the ground instead of padding the pockets of well-connected Liberal consultants?
Minister of Transport.
I am glad to have the Conservatives finally talking about supporting big nation-building projects. At a time when our economy is being battered by U.S. tariffs, that is exactly what we need. Now is the time to get shovels in the ground. Now is the time to build high-speed rail. Now is the time to build Canada. That is what the Prime Minister will be talking about with premiers in Saskatoon. That is going to be what is in the bill that we will be presenting in this session, and we're going to count on the Conservatives to support that.
All right. The member for Similkameen, South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the new Liberal Prime Minister is keeping the wasteful spending of Justin Trudeau. In fact, they are increasing spending on building bureaucracy and on well-connected consultants. The Prime Minister promised to cap spending at 8% and instead is increasing it at 2% and instead is increasing it by 8%. That's without even tabling a budget to give this House a full picture of our public finances. How is the Liberal government asking to spend $500 billion without a budget plan?
The President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the member that a lot of that funds in the main estimates are transfer payments to provinces and territories. That means billions of federal support for the member's province and the constituents. I challenge the member to join us in supporting these investments so that we can deliver services to Canadians and build Canada strong.
The member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, this week's throne speech confirms that Canadians are in for more of the same recklessness with this Liberal government. They promised to cap the spending at 2%. They've broken their promise again. Spending $500 billion, almost 8% more than Justin Trudeau. Same limitless spending, same mistakes that got Canada into this mess. Canada can't trust the Liberals gambling with their futures. When will the Prime Minister stop hiding the state of our finances and release a budget?
Minister of Government, Transformation and Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very proud to have been elected with this government on a strong mandate to reduce bureaucracy, make government more efficient. We're working on it, and the goal is to spend less so that we can invest more, and that's exactly what we're doing with a tax cut for 22 million Canadians. That's going to save on average per Canadian family $840. I'm hoping Conservatives will rally behind this common sense idea. Thank you.
The member for Regina, Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, over the last 10 years, the Liberal government's debt and deficits have been out of control. The Prime Minister said that his government had a plan to cap its spending increase at 2% and to cut expensive government consultants. But now the Liberals want to quadruple that spending increase and to spend 36% more on consultants, all without any accountability. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals spending $500 billion with no budget?
The Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy by the question by the member. In fact, what he's failing to tell Canadians watching today is that, in fact, Canada has one of the best balance sheets in the G7, Mr. Speaker. Not only we have a AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker, but we have the lowest debt to GDP ratio, Mr. Speaker. That is an enviable position. I just presided over the G7 Finance Minister meeting in Banff recently. Mr. Speaker, the world is watching what Canada has to offer, and the world wants what Canada has to offer, Mr. Speaker. In this sense, Mr. Speaker, we're going to build the strongest economy of the G7. We're going to make this country resilient and ambitious for all Canadians.
Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, on day one of his new job, the Prime Minister's housing minister told Canadians that home prices don't need to come down. After 10 years, the Liberals have doubled housing prices, down payments, mortgage payments, and rent. And now the housing minister is doubling down to keep home costs high. Can the Minister of Housing tell Canadians how many more families must fall behind before his government takes action and finally tables a budget?
Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, this government is taking action to put more money in Canadians' pockets by cutting their taxes right now. And we expect the support of the members opposite to ensure that Canadians can afford more housing options because they have more money in their pockets. It's simple math, difficult for the Conservatives across maybe to comprehend, but cutting taxes on GST for first-time home buyers and income tax delivers more affordability.
The member for Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, the Ontario Land Registry Office, Terranet, reports the average age of a first-time home buyer in Ontario last year was 40. Up from 34 a decade earlier. New data also shows GTA home sales are the worst since the market crash of the 1990s. And at home, the Niagara Home Builders Association has said housing starts in Niagara are at a 10-year low. This is the Liberals' government's 10-year record, Speaker. So can the Prime Minister tell us why Canadians should trust him and his government to fix the problems they themselves created?
Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I served for 10 years as mayor of Vancouver on the front lines of a housing crisis.
Hear, hear.
Cities, as many mayors and councillors here in Ottawa this week know, do not have the tools, the finances, or the jurisdiction to solve a housing crisis. That's why I'm here now. I am here now so the federal government can implement changes to make housing more affordable at a scale not seen in generations.
Thank you.
The member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years, the Liberals have doubled housing prices. The new minister's housing record shows the government is more of the same. As Mayor of Vancouver, he oversaw rent increasing 50%, house prices increasing 179%, and homelessness up 40%. And yet we know we must build more homes to meet demand. The City of Langford is actually discussing slowing down the development of homes, stating, quote, "There is no award for overachieving." How many more Canadians must struggle to find a home before this government finally tables a budget?
The Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, getting affordable homes built in Canada means partnership and collaboration across all levels of government. Federal government,
that's right.
Provinces and territories, cities, Indigenous communities. Challenges that we have on the ground in communities. For 7 of my 10 years as mayor, it was a Conservative government that did nothing for affordable housing across Canada.
The member for North Island, Powell River.
After 10 years of Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, many Canadians no longer feel safe in their own communities. Violent crime is up 50%. Gang homicides are up 78%. Gun crime up 116%. The direct result of the revolving door Liberal justice system, or injustice system, I should say, and weak Liberal laws that serve the interest of criminals and not Canadians. So, Mr. Speaker, if this really is a new government, will the Prime Minister repeal Trudeau's old soft on crime policies, including Bill C-5 and Bill C-75?
The Minister of Public Safety.
Our plan to keep communities safe will keep drugs, guns, and criminals off our streets. We're committed to hiring 1,000 more CBSA and 1,000 more RCMP officers to secure our border and help keep our streets safe. We're partnering with police services across the country to fight organized crime. We will make it tougher for violent criminals to get bail and impose stricter sentences for repeat violent offenders. We will always be there to protect Canadians.
The member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the now Minister of Public Safety said during the campaign that there was nothing wrong with the bail system in Canada. He even said it was, quote, quite sound. This despite the deadly spree of murders and other violent attacks committed by those out on bail and frontline officers across the country demanding immediate reform. So does the Prime Minister agree with his Minister of Public Safety that there's no problem with the bail laws in Canada or the frontline officers who are demanding real action now?
Hear, hear. Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it's always heartening to see the opposition clip something that's completely out of context. And unfortunately, the Conservative candidate in my riding didn't even show up for the debate. So let me just be clear. Our government was elected on April the 28th with a mandate of ensuring that our communities are safe. That is exactly what we will do. We will work with law enforcement. This morning, I had the opportunity to meet, along with the Minister of State for Labour, members of the CPA, Canadian Police Association, and I look forward to working with law enforcement across this country to make our communities safer, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Elmwood, Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, after knocking on thousands of doors in my community this past spring, I heard the same concerns, that people are worried about the rise in crime. In Winnipeg, violent crimes like assaults, threats, and extortion are increasing. Homicide Canada reported that in 2024, Winnipeg saw over 40 homicides for the 6th year in a row. Because of Liberal bills C-5 and C-75, repeat violent offenders are treated with kid gloves and get released. When will the Liberals finally put the rights of victims and law-abiding Canadians ahead of their soft-on-crime, hug-a-thug agenda?
The Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada.
Mr. Speaker, I'll take a moment to thank my constituents for returning me to the House of Commons for the 4th time and rising as the first time as Minister of Justice and Attorney General. talking to people during the campaign back home, they said when dangerous people commit serious crimes and pose a threat to the public safety, they should face serious consequences. We have listened to them, Mr. Speaker, and are moving forward with stronger bail provisions for auto theft, for home invasions, for drug trafficking. We're also going to advance stronger sentences for serious crimes and for repeat offenders. We're going to do what it takes to ensure that Canadians can feel safe in their communities and be safe in their communities.
The member for Richmond Centre Marpole.
Mr. Speaker, since 2016, 50,000 Canadians died from drug overdoses, mostly from fentanyl. Mass fentanyl production is mass murder. Conservatives propose life sentences for producing or distributing over 40 milligrams. How many more Canadians must die before the Prime Minister treats mass production of fentanyl as mass murder and supports life sentences for drug kingpins?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the fentanyl crisis has impacted every community, not just in Canada, in North America, and many communities around the world. We're accelerating our work to crack down and dismantle the fentanyl trade and organized crime groups that profit from it. That's why we listed 7 cartels as terrorist entities under the Criminal Code. And I'm working closely with Kevin Brasseau, Canada's fentanyl czar, at home and abroad, to put a laser-sharp focus on dismantling fentanyl rings, Mr. Speaker. We will always be there to protect Canadians.
The member for Portage-Lisker.
Like most Canadians, I don't stash my assets in offshore tax havens in Bermuda or the Cayman Islands, and like them, I believe in shining a little sunlight on the people who govern us. The Prime Minister claims his assets are in a blind trust, but Canadians are the ones completely in the dark. He absolutely knows what his assets were before he placed them into a blind trust. So I'll ask a simple question that deserves a simple answer. Does the Prime Minister knowingly or blindly hold any financial interest in any offshore tax havens? Yes or no?
Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are so proud to have a new Prime Minister with a clear vision of the country, with a plan to rebuild our economy, a plan to take on the tariff challenges with the United States, the plan to give prosperity to all Canadians, and of course, a plan to comply stringently with the Code of Ethics for all parliamentarians, which is among the most stringent in the world. He will be complying, that member will be complying, we will all be complying, and Canadians should feel very reassured about that.
Member for Portage-Lisker.
I do not feel reassured. I certainly did not hear a no in there, but what we do know is that this Prime Minister was implicated in setting up offshore tax havens to avoid paying Canadian taxes. We know he's sitting on stocks from Brookfield Assets, which is riddled with conflicts of interest and benefits handsomely from government conflicts. We know he's perfectly fine to promote companies Brookfield owns on the debate stage, so what will he do to help himself behind the closed doors of government? Canadians deserve to know if he will financially benefit from any current or future contracts Brookfield gets with his government. So when will the Prime Minister come clean and tell Canadians what assets he personally holds?
The Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has been the governor of 2 central banks, has a successful career that I'm sure he's very proud of in the private sector, has come to public service once again, another tour of public service for our Prime Minister with a clear plan to get Canada's economy back on track. That's what the Prime Minister is up to. What he's also up to is stringent compliance with the Code of Ethics that this Parliament has imposed upon itself, one of the most serious and stringent in the world. Canadians should feel very reassured.
The member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister has a plan, we'd sure love to see it here in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, on the eve of the election, when he was trying to get elected, the Prime Minister went on an Oilers radio show in Edmonton, asked about oil. He said, quote, "There's a massive opportunity. If you look out east, particularly in Quebec, they import about 365,000 barrels a day. 70% of that's coming from the U.S. So we've got an opportunity to displace there." But in the past, well, first of all, he's got a Quebec minister who's now looking at me in complete disagreement with those statements. But even the Prime Minister has said as much as half of oil reserves, proven oil reserves, need to stay in the ground.
The Minister
Which of the Prime Minister's position should we believe?
Minister for Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, to win this trade war, we will build Canada's
on Canada's terms to deliver the strongest, most resilient economy in the G7. Canada's new government will cut red tape, fast-track projects of national interest, and guarantee decisions within 2 years. We are not building just for speed, we are building for purpose, to have a strong negotiating hand and unlock the next generation of Canadian prosperity. We will get projects built to make Canada an energy superpower.
The member for Leduc-Wetaskiwin.
Look, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister went on to say, like we've got this resource, at a minimum, we should be using it all the time ourselves because we're going to use what I call conventional oil and gas for the rest of my life and beyond. He said that in Edmonton when he was trying to get elected, but he has a history of saying that we should leave oil and gas in the ground. When will this government finally repeal Bill C-69 to create the conditions that will actually allow us to take advantage of this massive opportunity to be realized?
Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give a shout out to the Edmonton Oilers who won last night. So, Mr. Speaker, my goal is to get things built where we have proponents. We will make Canada strong and protect ourselves from American tariffs. I encourage my Conservative colleagues to join us in building the strongest economy in the G7.
Gatun West.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's energy sector and economy continues to be held back by Liberal anti-energy laws like the industrial carbon tax and Bill C-69, which blocks all new energy infrastructure. This is compounded by Justin Trudeau's energy production cap, which will kill 54,000 jobs and gut $20 billion from the Canadian economy. This new Prime Minister likes to market himself as the anti-Trudeau. Well, it's time for him to prove it. Will the Prime Minister repeal the industrial carbon tax, repeal C-69, and repeal the oil and gas production cap? Or is he just another Trudeau clone willing to let our energy sector die?
Great question.
Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Today, Canadians are facing threats to our way of life from both climate change and American tariffs. We are tackling these problems head-on by building clean energy projects that will fight climate change and make Canada the strongest economy in the G7. The industrial carbon price attracts new investment, creates jobs, and grows our economy. With innovation in carbon capture, we will build low-cost, low-risk, low-carbon superpower. I encourage my colleagues to join us in building a stronger Canada.
Mr. Speaker, just hours before the May long weekend, Parks Canada blindsided my region by banning motorized boats on Clear Lake after confirming access a week earlier. There was no consultation or warning. Locals cared deeply about the lake, which is why the agency's one boat, one lake policy had broad support. But when asked what suddenly changed, Parks Canada refused to justify its damning decision that caused whiplash in the region. Will the minister reinstate the one boat, one lake policy that Parks Canada supported just weeks ago?
Great question.
Minister of Canadian Identity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, in that lake and in that region, we are facing a zebra mussel invasion, which we must intervene to control. Otherwise, it could spread in the region, in other water basin, and around that area, Mr. Speaker, which is why with Parks Canada, with local partners, with Indigenous partners who support what Parks Canada has been doing, we are trying to tackle this issue as rapidly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, that answer is unacceptable. The mismanagement by Parks Canada of Riding Mountain National Park is not new, and neither is the minister's refusal to act. He's been warned time and again that Parks Canada ongoing failures. No communication, no engagement, and no accountability. Every time Canadians raise the alarm, the minister insists things will improve. But nothing ever changes, Mr. Speaker. Will the minister finally take responsibility and replace the superintendent of Riding Mountain National Park to restore trust and confidence?
Great.
That's right.
Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite is saying is simply not true. And we have, in fact, been working. Mr. Speaker, what the member opposite is saying is simply not true. And we have, in fact, been working with local authorities. Parks Canada provided funding to compensate some of the loss in revenues last year because of the closure as we are trying to tackle this very important crisis. It is totally irresponsible for this member to somehow suggest that we should just let the zebra mussel spread all around Manitoba. Imagine the impacts for local drinking water, for commerce, for businesses all across the province. This is totally irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, as fires burn across the prairies, I know I speak for everyone in this House that our hearts are with all of those who have been impacted and those who are working tirelessly to protect our communities. Now, in the wake of the Jasper fire, we learned about the devastating consequences of poor forest management that failed to clear swaths of dead forest. Experts are now sounding the alarm that communities in national parks like Banff face similar threats this summer. Can the government tell us what preparations, if any, have been undertaken by Parks Canada to protect communities from wildfire?
Director of Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, I'm monitoring the wildlife situation around the clock, and I'm in close communication with my provincial counterparts. The Canadian Armed Forces are evacuating First Nations and others affected by the wildfires. Leaving your home under these circumstances is incredibly difficult, and our government will continue to support and protect all of those affected by wildfires. There's nothing more important than keeping Canadians safe.